Kelli Thompson, welcome to the conversation today.
Oh, I'm excited to talk about what we're going to talk about.
It is a pleasure to be with you. You're joining me from Omaha, Nebraska. I'm south of Salt Lake City in Utah. And today we're going to be talking about shifting from a doer mindset to a leader mindset. I really like that. I love talking about mindset shifts. Generally speaking, I think there's a lot of mindset shifts we need to go through to be more effective, to be more impactful, to be better leaders. And this shifting from a doer mindset is one that's intriguing to me, in part because I've kind of always thought of myself as a doer. I'm kind of one of those personalities. It's part of my part of my identity, I think. Like people know me as someone who gets stuff done. And so, I'm thinking, man, is that something that keeps me from being more effective, a more effective leader? And while they're not mutually exclusive, obviously we need leaders who can get stuff done too. There is something important to that. Like if you're only focused on getting tasks done, you're going to miss out on a whole lot. And so we're going to unpack that today and really explore that together. As we get started, I just wanted to share Kelli's bio with everybody. Kelli Thompson is an award-winning executive coach and speaker who is on a mission to advance women to the rooms where decisions are made. She has coached and trained thousands of women to trust themselves, lead with more confidence, and create a career they love. She is the founder of the Clarity and Confidence Women's Leadership Group and a Stevie Award winner for Women in Business Coach of the Year. She is the author of the critically acclaimed book, Closing the Confidence Gap: Boost Your Peace, Your Potential, and Your Paycheck. I love everything about that. Is there anything, Kelli, that you would like to highlight by way of your background or personal context before we dive on in?
I think maybe just to, put a pin in exactly what you were saying, I'm a corporate veteran, so I haven't always been off on my own. I spent over 15 years in corporate America, and I like to talk about this topic because, hey, guess what? I only talk about the things that I struggle with. I only talk about the things that I had a problem with. It's kind of like my way to solve my own problems. And honestly, even running my own business, I've struggled like doing too much doing and really thinking about Kelli, like, should you be spending your time there or should you be hiring or outsourcing so that you can free your time up to do the things that you actually need to do to like help your business grow? So I just want folks to know that I'm right in there with you with this topic today.
Yeah, yeah. And it really is a challenge because especially when we're thinking about corporate types, executive leaders, we're thinking about entrepreneurs, solopreneurs. I mean, these are people who are often type A. These are people who are achievers, often overachievers. These are people that get stuff done, right?
Hmm.
And often you're promoted in a corporate environment because you're someone who gets stuff done, more so than others around you. When you're an entrepreneur or a solopreneur, you're successful or not, often in large part, at least early on, because there's someone who grinds and you get stuff done, right? But at some point, like you move into certain roles or a certain kind of a stage where there really does start to be a shift in what you need to be spending your time doing, or at least the bulk of your time doing. And it's a hard shift. It's why many entrepreneurs might be great at the startup phase, but they're not good at the scaling phase. Or, someone who might be a great, mid-level, salesperson or a great engineer, and then they're good mid-level supervisor. They move up into an executive role and they can't do it, right? Because they're very different skill sets. I mean, they're just very different types of things that we need to be doing in a workplace environment. Um, so as we get going with this topic, why don't you start by just sharing your perspective on why this is so hard, and maybe if you've had, like you alluded to, like some experience with this yourself.
hmm it's so hard because we have to think about how we are brought up. And we are brought up, remember, with gold stars. Oh my gosh, John, you're the
Right.
best. You're the fastest. You did this better than anyone else. You did it growing up in school. We did it growing up early in our careers. And so our reward system just becomes when I do the things and I do them better, faster, and smarter than everyone else, then I get rewards. I think we also live in a US corporate culture where what we do is so ingrained with who we are. It doesn't
Yeah.
take long for you to meet someone new and be like, well, hey, what do you do? And so
Right.
when we start to intertwine that who we are with what we do, untangling that can be really painful. And that starts to happen as you advance from doer to leader, because all of a sudden now you're being asked to delegate the things that you've been doing, to coach other people on the things that you've been doing. And that's where the rubber hits the road, is because here you are. And I remember too, I used to lead training teams and run HR. And so I would delegate things to my new trainers, and I would sit in and observe and watch them train a class. And I think we've all been there. It is really painful to watch someone else struggle doing something that you can do really, really well. And that is the point where leaders really kind of have to make this choice, because it is uncomfortable to watch people struggle. And so, what people and leaders often do is they're like, oh, I'll just jump back in and take over because they're making a mistake, or they're just doing it really awkwardly. And I have all this
Right.
secondhand embarrassment. And they start to think like, well, because if I'm not doing all this work and I'm just sitting back and I'm watching and observing, like, then how do I even add value? And so that's where it really becomes a struggle for me when I was in corporate. And honestly, that's where it becomes a huge struggle for my clients too, is their inability to sit with the discomfort and watch someone else do something differently and more awkwardly than they would do it. And so that point where they have to sit back and sit with that discomfort is really where the magic happens, that we can start to coach someone and kind of let them figure it out through that struggle. But all too often, they jump in, they take back, they take over. And to your point, many times my clients come to me for coaching because they're stuck in kind of like that director, maybe senior director, VP level role, and they can't get promoted above that because they're spending so much time and energy jumping back in and fixing things, disempowering their team. They're taking on work that, they should not be doing because it's below the strategic level they need to be. And so then what happens is the leadership team, the CEO, the C-suite, sees these individuals as indispensable because they
Right.
do jump in, but they don't see them as executive material. And so that jump to be able to kind of untangle your who with your do, delegate things, watch someone else do things not the way you would do them, and turn into a coach versus someone who's jumping in and saving the day all the time, that switch can be really a big struggle for folks as they want to advance in the organization. And even as an entrepreneur too, this is really
Yeah.
no different.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes it's that secondhand embarrassment. So sometimes it's just like you just don't like seeing people struggle. And sometimes it really is just, this genuine desire to help, like you
Mhm.
see someone struggling and you know that you know how to do this thing and you have this genuine desire to help this person. And the real way to help them is to let them have experience and then to coach them and to give them feedback and to let them practice. That's the real way to help them. But in the moment, the real way, the way that goes through your mind is I'm going to swoop in and try to save them. Plus that's a little bit of an ego boost. And so there's all these things kind of going on. Something else that sometimes happens too, and I've noticed this with certain leaders, is if they're not constantly doing, they feel, I mean, you kind of alluded to this, but like if they're not constantly doing, they feel like they're not accomplishing. They
Mhm.
feel like they're not signaling to others that they're worthwhile, that they're accomplishing things. And in some cases, they actually not only do they feel that way about themselves, but they feel that way about others around them too. So I
Mhm.
was working with someone recently who 100% they felt this, like I could tell they felt this way about themselves. They're a doer. Like they get stuff done. They're known for getting stuff done. They're good at that, right? They get stuff done. They're struggling, like you said, to just step back, to delegate, to take on more strategic roles. But as I'm listening to this person talk about their direct reports, one of the reasons why, they struggle to delegate is there's clearly not trust. They clearly don't
Mhm.
trust their people. They kind of talk negatively about their people. Their people don't get stuff done. They don't know what their people do anyways, and their people don't, work hard, blah, blah, blah. And clearly there was this like this attitude that if their people weren't constantly demonstrating churn of just getting stuff done, regardless of what it was, that they weren't demonstrating their value either. And so when, if there's this mindset of I just got to be constantly, butts in seats, churning out stuff, getting stuff done. And that's how I define myself. That's how I define my value. That's how everyone around me defines themselves. Um, I mean, that's problematic generally, but
Mhm.
it's especially problematic when you start to find yourself in higher
Mhm.
level more strategic leadership roles, because that's really not what a strategic leader and executive should be doing.
Mhm.
You no longer have all the expertise. You lead a team of people who have expertise in each of their areas. You have to lean on them, rely on them, trust them, empower them to do their stuff. And if you can't do that for whatever reason, if you can't do that, then you're not going to be effective in your role.
Mhm.
And as we've alluded to, like there's just a lot of reasons why people struggle with that.
Absolutely. I want to go back to something you said. You said the word trust. They may not trust their people. And so I want to talk about a kind of an overwhelm cycle that starts to happen because I think this
Yeah.
is where a lot of my clients see this, and I know I did too, is, let's just say that we are a doer. And so we take and we take and we take, and, we get delegated stuff and we're like, yeah, I'll do it. And then all of a sudden we get really overwhelmed. And
Hmm.
then because we're so overwhelmed, we're forced to delegate because it's like, oh my gosh, somebody takes something. Well, usually what happens then when we're forced to delegate, there's usually not a lot of thought and intention behind that delegation. So we give it
Right.
to somebody. And then what do people do? People make mistakes because you know what? People are human and people make mistakes. And so then it's like, oh my gosh, that person made a mistake. Well, now I have to take it back and I have to fix it. And then I start telling myself, see, I can't trust anyone. This is why I have to do everything around here. And the whole cycle starts again. But the problem is too many leaders are delegating when the stakes are too high. And so,
Right.
yeah, when you're delegating when the stakes are too high, of course, you're probably going to have someone make a mistake at a moment that we can't make a mistake. They're making a mistake that impacts a client, or you're sitting in front of the board, or you're making a mistake of something that's going out in marketing copy. When the key is if you really want to build trust on your team and psychological safety, the key is to delegate when the stakes are low because you should actually expect and plan for people to make mistakes.
Of
And so when I'm
course.
like teaching this, I see folks like having like heart palpitations. And I'm like, okay, if you're having a heart palpitation about somebody making a mistake, then you are not delegating something low stakes enough. And so my task for you listening is to think about what is something that you could delegate that is so low stakes that when someone makes a mistake, you're like, awesome, this means we have a learning moment here, right? They're going to see that this was that weird kink in the process that I had to learn how to do too. And so it's like find those places where you're okay with people making mistakes because if you don't allow your team to make a mistake, you're going to be left with a team who was unwilling to try anything new. And so, to start to build that trust, to start to build that psychological safety, it's really important to ask yourself, is this delegation low stakes enough that if they make a mistake, like it's going to be a good thing because it's going to create this learning moment that where the all the growth happens.
Yeah, I love that. I think lower stakes is better in so many different contexts of conversation when we're talking about trust. Um, and so often, if we're struggling in any type of relationship, it could be a romantic relationship, a friendship relationship, a workplace relationship, a leader, relationship. In any relationship, if there's a trust issue and we're trying to develop and foster trust and grow that, flex that muscle and build that muscle, like yeah, of course, you need to start with lower stakes. It's like with a romantic relationship. I don't show up on the first date and propose marriage. Like that would be insanity, right? Like literally it would be insane, and the other person would rightfully run off in the other direction to get away from that because that person's nuts. And it's, I mean, think about that. Like that's
Mhm.
equally as insane as if the boss delegates to you like some crazy high stakes thing for the first time that they want you to do something. Why would you do that? Like you're
Mhm.
literally setting them up for failure. And usually when that happens, it's also kind of last minute. It's usually
Mhm.
like an emergency. So your lack of you know, timely, thoughtful delegation. Your emergency becomes my emergency, and of course, there's going to be things that don't work out perfectly.
Mhm.
You didn't do it. You offloaded it to me. Now I have to do it, and somehow I'm supposed to do it perfectly. Like
Mhm.
that's insane. And if you take like a second to think about that, I think most normal, thoughtful people will recognize that. But in the moment, like you said, you just get frustrated, it reinforces your thinking about like, see, I can't trust these people.
Hmm.
And it's really, really unfortunate. So lower the stakes. Absolutely. Like delegation should be part of like what you do daily with your team,
Hmm.
Like if you're having a regular environment of coaching, teaching, mentoring, like delegation is going to be happening constantly. You're
Hmm.
going to be giving them opportunities to try new things, stretch assignments, um, and you're going to be giving them feedback along the way. And guess what? As you do that, they're going to feel empowered to try and sometimes fail and learn,
Hmm.
and then
Hmm.
try new things and learn. And they'll know that like doing something that doesn't work perfectly actually isn't failure. It's learning, and you're going to help them. And by the time they get to those higher stakes in situations, they're going to be ready. They're going to be prepared because they know what to do because they've already had all of these learning opportunities along the way. Like that's such common sense. Yet, we so often
Hmm.
don't see that common sense play
Hmm.
out in corporate environments. It's kind of crazy.
Hmm. Well, I think it is common sense because we're slowing down and we're thinking about it. But you have to remember, like when we're in the moment, juggling all the things, we're not using that part of our brain that slows down and is actually thinking about these things. And so
Yeah.
that's why I'm always asking leaders, like, well, number one, when are you spending time every week really thinking about how you're intentionally spending your week? And they're like, I don't even know what I could delegate, Kelly. And so I actually always start with, well, let's just start with the place that where do you feel most resentment right now? Most resentment or
Mm.
boredom. And they're like, oh my gosh, this meeting. And I'm like, okay, well, is there anybody else in your team in this meeting? Yeah, there's like three other team members. Well, why are you there? Like that was my biggest aha is I will never forget a meeting that I was sitting in. It was after like, well, it was supposed to be after lunch, but I hadn't eaten lunch yet. So I'm hangry. I'm
Right.
annoyed. I've been in meetings all day long and I'm feeling resentful. And I'm looking around the room and I'm like, why am I even here? I have three people on my team in this meeting who honestly probably know about more about the topic that I do, but I was invited. And I'm like, honestly, my presence being here actually hinders their development because if somebody asks a question and my team member would answer, what would people do? They would look at me because I was the hippo
Right.
in the room. I had the highest paid person's opinion. And so I was negating their growth and development by being there. And I'm like, I'm out of this meeting. And then I had to go and tell folks, hey, these individuals are in this meeting. They can make the decisions. I'll catch up with you afterwards. I'll get the TLDR. I'll get the info. And so I tell folks, like, what meetings are you sitting in that you no longer need to belong in? Think about things that are no longer a development opportunity for you. If you have something mastered, ask yourself, is there someone on my team who would be thrilled to learn how to like do this analysis or lead this meeting or whatever it might look like? And then you can also ask yourself too, like, what are just things that I've outgrown that would, suit someone else's strengths better? Maybe it's not in your best skill set. Like, is there someone
Yeah.
else on your team that just has that skill set there? But it takes time and energy as a leader to actually sit down. I really encourage them, like either on a Friday or a Monday, to really think about these sort of things because you hit the nail on the head. When you are in the moment of overwhelm, you are just responding and reacting. And that's no place, that's not that side of the brain that needs to slow down and think about what do I need to accomplish this week? Am I the best person to accomplish it? Is this the best and highest use of my energy? And what else can I spread around so that I can be freed up as a leader, but it also provides development for someone else as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, if we're trying to get past the point of leadership where we're just running around all day like chickens with their heads cut off, putting out fires. And that's what a lot of leaders spend like 80-90% of their time doing, going to meetings and putting out fires, right? I bet when you're talking to clients, people who come to you, that's like what they're doing most of the time, right?
Mhm.
Um, that's not executive leadership. That's not strategic leadership.
Right.
That's like no wonder people are burning out and frustrated and not feeling like they're having an opportunity to progress in their careers because you don't have any time to do any actual leadership in that kind of an environment, and it becomes a self perpetuating kind of cycle unless we purposely interrupt it. And it can be really hard when you see yourself in the middle of that cycle, you're like, how in the world do I stop going to all these meetings? How in
Hmm.
the world do I stop putting out fires? Because guess what? There are new fires every day. Like I just have all these things I have to respond to. I can't just not respond to them. Like how do I do that? So what would you say to someone who recognizes they need to do that, but they're just like, how
Hmm.
do I interrupt this cycle so that I can
Hmm.
start down a different path? So like instead of spending 80, 90% of my time in meetings and putting out fires, I can get that down to like 60% of my time and then down to half of my time and then down to like 40,
Hmm.
30% of my time. Like, what
Yeah.
would you suggest?
I often tell folks they usually know when they're at that point because they start feeling emotions like resentment,
Yeah.
overwhelm, anger, frustration. So instead of like trying to work through those emotions, actually just acknowledge them that those emotions are probably there just to wake you up a little bit, that something is misaligned. That is the first clue that something is out of alignment with your values and your talents, is that you're feeling resentment, frustration, or anger. Okay. So just notice. And then the second thing that I would have them take a look at is, okay, what is something that is on your plate that is draining your energy the most? You just
Mm.
absolutely dread it. Just start there. Like start with one little thing, and maybe it's a meeting, maybe it's a report you have to pull, maybe it's an analysis you have to conduct, right? Maybe it's a email blast you have to send. Like if that's the thing, ask yourself, can I dump it? Like, do I even need to do it, or did this like happened post COVID and I got invited to the meeting one time and now I'm just on the recurring invite. So I keep showing up. Like, can I just dump it? Maybe nobody needs to do it anymore. Okay.
Yeah.
If we can't dump it, can you delegate it? Is there somebody on my team that would love to learn how to write these communications, who would love to sit in this meeting, love to learn how to do this analysis? And if you can't dump it and you can't delegate it, maybe you need to ask yourself, can I outsource this? I'm working with my clients so much these days on outsourced AI tools. I mean,
Mm.
AI is brilliant. We could have a whole separate podcast on that. But there are just so many things that you can outsource either to AI. Maybe you need to outsource something, in terms of like when I worked for a small office, we would outsource a lot of administrative tasks. A lot of people who
Mm.
come in and restock our coffee. I mean, just crap like that. So what
Yeah.
can you dump? What can you delegate? And then what can you outsource? And we don't need to do everything all at once. It's like, let's just start with the task that's the most draining and work our way up from there and make little adjustments, but really think about how are you going to spend that new time intentionally as a leader, with the time you have freed up from the time that you have given away from doing that thing you no longer want to do.
Right. And that intentionality is really the key because that time will get sucked right back up.
Correct.
As soon as you free that up, it will get sucked back up into something else, another meeting, another fire that needs to be put out, another whatever, right? And
Correct.
so you really got to protect it. You got to be very intentional about it. And then, but once you start to do that, guess what? Now you've freed up an hour that you
Mhm.
get to be strategic or that you get to spend time empowering your people and coaching them. And guess what? Once you start to do that proactively, you're going to have less fires to put out, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so, like next week, instead of spending whatever X amount of time putting out fires, like incrementally, that amount of time is going to come down because people aren't going to have to come to you for every last little thing because
Mhm.
they're going to feel empowered to make their own decisions and to solve their own problems and to just all the little dumb things that you have to deal with you're not going to have to deal with anymore.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden the cycle will start to go the other direction. you know
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
it's really fun to see when that starts to happen, but only if you protect it. So
Yes.
that really can be a hard thing. And again, the whole reason why we started out this conversation with the mindset shift is because it really requires that shift in mindset because you can free yourself up. Don't go to that meeting anymore, do whatever.
Mhm.
But if that shift in mindset doesn't happen, guess what? You're going to slip right back into it and do the exact same thing with just new stuff, right?
Exactly. That's why that's the hardest part to make that shift because here you are, you're over functioning. You're allowing everyone else around you to underfunction. And so all of a sudden when you stop over functioning, it's that dealing with the struggle and the discomfort of not knowing what to do with your time. That's where the magic happens of making that shift, of being okay with a little bit of discomfort here.
Yeah, I love it. Well, this has just been a great conversation, Kelly. I think we could go on and on, but I do note the time. I need to let you go here in a minute before we wrap things up for today. I just wanted to give you a chance to share with the audience how they can connect with you, find out more about your work, where they can find out more information, find your book, those sorts of things, and then give us the final word for today.
Sounds awesome. Yeah, the best place to find me is just to come to my website at kellyraythompson.com. I'm Kelly with an I, R-A-E. Otherwise, I mostly hang out on LinkedIn. I'm at / Kelly Ray Thompson. And my book you can find anywhere books are sold. If you like the sound of my voice, you can listen to me on Audible. But again, I think I would just really reiterate, remember, when you are over functioning, you are allowing everyone else around you to underfunction. And the world has
Mm.
conspired to keep you in your overfunctioning because they benefit from it. So, your choice to become more strategic and more influential and do less doing not only will be a difficult emotional transition for you, but remember, it will also cause other people to jump back as well. But it is okay to allow for a little discomfort, to allow folks to readjust because you're always teaching people how to treat you, and you can choose to start teaching people how to treat you in a whole new way starting after this podcast.
I love it. Yeah, let's retrain ourselves. Let's retrain those around us. Let's set up some boundaries, right? All of that's so important. Kelly, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure. I encourage the audience to reach out, to get connected, find out more about what Kelly can do for you. And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe, that you can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you all have a great week.